In 1989, a mysterious white fungus swept through Brazil's cacao fields, wiping out 70% of the nation's chocolate crop and destroying 200,000 farms almost overnight. Today, the entire world relies on just 3 types of cacao, and most come from genetically identical trees in West Africa. The smallest mutation, a single drought, or one rogue spore could tip chocolate from luxury to extinction. So why hasn't the industry done more? And what secret weakness keeps chocolate teetering on the edge? May 1989 brought a quiet morning in Bahia's cacao belt. But for thousands of farming families, it was the beginning of the end. Along a dirt road near Ilias, a farmer found something strange clinging to the branches of his cacao trees, a white tangled mass that looked like dried brooms. Within weeks, the disease spread from farm to farm, turning once healthy orchards into fields of twisted, lifeless wood. The fungus Monilioptera perniciosa had arrived from the Amazon, more than 1,000 kilometers away, and it moved with a speed no one had seen before. By the end of that year, entire communities watched their livelihoods vanish. Pruning and burning infected branches offered little hope. The disease leapt across the humid Atlantic forests, leaving behind 300,000 hectares of ruined farms. Within a decade, Brazil's chocolate output collapsed by more than 70%. Over 200,000 workers lost their jobs. Machinery rusted in abandoned fields as families packed their belongings and joined a tide of migration to cities already struggling to cope. Bahia's cocoa towns, once prosperous, became places of empty homes and shuttered schools. The land itself changed as pastures replaced forests and rains washed away the topsoil. For the farmers who stayed, every harvest brought fewer pods and more memories of what was lost. The disaster in Bahia was not just a story of crops destroyed, but of a way of life erased almost overnight. Commercial chocolate depends on just 3 genetic varieties: Criollo, Forastero, and Trinitario. Nearly all the world's supply, about 70%, comes from a single type, a Melanado Forastero, grown in vast plantations across West Africa. Rows of identical trees stretch for miles, each one a genetic copy of the next. Plant geneticist Dr. Samuel Boateng stands in a test plot outside Accra, Ghana, surrounded by these uniform groves. He explains that unlike wild cacao in the Amazon, which grows under a canopy and mixes genes freely, these plantations are monocultures. A single spore or virus can sweep through the entire crop, unchecked by natural diversity. Cacao trees take 3 to 5 years before they bear their first pods. When disease strikes, recovery is measured in generations, not seasons. Physiology researcher Dr. Amina Mensah points to another problem. Under the harsh sun of modern farms, cacao trees become stressed and produce less of their natural chemical defenses. Theobromine, the compound that helps cacao fight off threats, drops by as much as 40% when trees are under stress. That leaves them even more vulnerable to pathogens like Monilioptera and Phytophthora. This genetic uniformity, combined with weakened natural defenses, creates a biological trap. One outbreak can leap continents and devastate harvests worldwide. For the chocolate industry, the real threat is not just a single disease, it is the invisible risk built into the crop itself. In the early 1970s, cacao growers in Ecuador faced a new and baffling threat. Pods that once promised a healthy harvest began to show a white, powdery coating, at first just a dusting, then thick enough to blanket entire groves. The culprit, Monilioptera roreri, soon earned the name frosty pod. Each infected pod released millions of spores, carried by the wind across valleys and farms with alarming speed. Within 5 years, Ecuador's cacao output dropped by nearly 1/3. Farmers watched as the disease swept through their fields, leaving behind shriveled pods and empty branches. No chemical could stop it. Fungicides failed, and traditional methods, pruning, burning, even abandoning infected trees, could not keep pace with the relentless spread. Archival interviews capture the frustration and helplessness of the time. Scientists in lab coats poring over ruined samples, growers describing how the white spores drifted over fences and roads, settling like ash on healthy trees. As the disease spread into Colombia and Panama, the warning was clear. A single outbreak left unchecked could cripple an entire nation's chocolate crop. In 2010, a partnership between Mars, IBM, and the USDA announced they had sequenced the complete cacao genome. The project, funded with millions from Mars, was pitched as a breakthrough for disease resistance and crop improvement. But once the genome map became public, a surge of patent filings followed. Companies raced to secure exclusive rights over genes linked to drought tolerance, pest resistance, and even flavor. Patent databases began filling with filings from Mars, Hershey, and other multinational chocolate firms, each staking claims on critical genetic sequences. Internal strategy papers from industry leaders described a new approach: control the genetics, and you control the future of chocolate. 6 corporations now oversee nearly 40% of all cocoa processed worldwide. The shift from open science to proprietary control meant that access to disease-resistant cacao could be limited by licensing fees and legal restrictions. For many growers, the cure for the next outbreak might exist, locked behind a paywall, owned by the very companies that profit most from scarcity. In a greenhouse at UC Berkeley, researchers gathered around cacao saplings that had been edited with CRISPR-Cas9. The results were striking. Field trials in Ecuador showed disease rates cut by nearly 2/3. Pods stayed healthy on trees that, just a season before, would have been stripped bare by fungus. Lead scientist Dr. Maria Alvarez described it as the breakthrough they had waited decades for. Cacao plants carrying wild Amazon genes finally able to resist the rot that had haunted plantations from Brazil to Panama. But these trees would never reach the farms that needed them most. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, the world's top producers, had strict bans on genetically modified crops. European Union regulations classified any gene-edited cacao as a genetically modified organism, blocking imports and threatening trade. Dr. Alvarez later said in a 2019 interview that the technology works, and that the barriers are political, not scientific. For now, the solution sits behind locked doors, while climate change and disease tighten their grip on the world's chocolate supply. Climate models released in 2021 point to an uncomfortable reality for cacao. The ideal zone for growing these trees is moving uphill by about 1,000 feet by the year 2040. In West Africa, where most of the world's chocolate begins, there simply are not enough highlands to follow that shift. The land flattens out, leaving nowhere for the crop to retreat. At the same time, rainfall patterns are changing. Dry seasons are growing longer and more severe, pushing cacao trees to their limits. These trees can only survive about 3 weeks without water before they begin to die. By 2050, up to half of the land now used for cacao in West Africa could become unsuitable. The options for relocating entire plantations are vanishing. The geography itself is running out. For millions of small farmers, there is no backup plan. No new region is waiting to absorb the world's sweet tooth. The edge of survival is no longer theoretical. It is mapped, measured, and drawing closer every year. Chocolate demand rises by 3% each year, driven mostly by new markets in Asia. But the world's cacao harvest has barely budged. Since 2020, the price of cocoa beans has soared by 45%. For the millions of smallholder farmers who supply most of the world's chocolate, the numbers are stark. The average grower in West Africa earns around $1 a day, barely enough to cover basic needs, let alone invest in new trees or disease control. Commodity traders track the climb on global indices, but on the ground, the pressure is relentless. One Ivorian farmer describes scraping together enough for school fees, only to lose half his crop to black pod rot. In Ghana, another farmer says he has already switched to growing cassava part-time just to survive. Resistance to fungicides is spreading. Growers use more chemicals and get less chocolate in return. Experts warn that without new solutions, the entire system could unravel in 20 to 30 years. The countdown is already underway. Chocolate's survival now hinges on genetic innovation and on whether the world allows it to reach the farms that need it most. As climate and disease close in, one bitter truth remains. Our appetite for chocolate may outlast the crop itself. The clock is still ticking.